Well, hey guys, how is everybody doing out there? Yeah, it was a dumb thing to say, I know. It's not going so great. Things are pretty weird right now. I just want to check in and just have a quick conversation to address some of the elephants in the room that are currently, landing on all of us with this current situation that we're in pandemically. Um, Real estate wise, and this goes out to not just my current clients, but uh, people who are in my sphere of influence that are considering selling their property still or have other plans, and they've been in communication with me for a while, discussing some options or having, moving forward with plans to do things in the future. And yes, things are different now than they were even just a week ago. First off, houses are still selling right now. At the time of this recording, it is the 19th of March, and things are still closing. Business is still happening. Houses are still selling, being shown, closing, all of that. Some of the elements of those transactions are definitely shifting, and there are things that are changing, and this is definitely going to have ramifications for the market. What they specifically are, I don't know exactly. Nobody does, and anybody who tells you they do is lying to you. This is kind of unprecedented territory. We're floating out there in the water, and this is just a new chapter in the world of real estate as it sits, and globally. I mean, this is not just a situation for us in Michigan or in America, but this is the whole world dealing with this, and this is just one tiny facet of a very large element of our lives here that is now changed for whatever reasons, whatever the moving forces are behind it all. I mean, that's not within the scope of this video here. I just wanted to reach out and have a pretty quick conversation about some of the things that are of import to people who are currently on the market or about to be on the market in the corona times of now. So first off, as far as listings and getting listed is concerned, I've actually been doing virtual market analyses for many years now. It's just one of the ways that I do things personally. I basically put together, my entire CMA, and I go through it on my own computer at home or in my office as a screencast, and I record it. Our market analysis process is a little bit different than most. Basically, we do what we call a total market overview, where we will break apart all the activity that's happening in a given city over the last 6 months and break it into price points and kind of see where things are going for each price point, because every market has kind of a very different spread between its various price points. It might be a seller's market in one price point and a buyer's market in another. So anyway, we first start with that, and then we tighten it up into your neighborhood specifically, and we do look at comparable properties, but we also look at price per square foot adjusted for house sizes and things like that. And then at the end of that, we'll break it into a seller net sheet that will basically give you all of your costs and a couple different pricing scenarios and what you would walk away with at the end of the day, and some loose estimations about timing and days on market, things like that, relative to historical norms. That information at the moment, as far as timelines is concerned, we have no real way to know exactly how the current situation is going to affect timelines for things. So there's a little bit of a gray area with that, regardless of what the historical norms have been. I mean, we don't know what's going on right now. So a lot of fallout is still happening in general here. So there's more paperwork. We're seeing more addendums relative to the virus and other contingencies relative to the potential job loss of a buyer, things like that. That's going to become a normal part of closings moving forward. And I expect that we're going to see, as the economy takes more of a punch, which it has not really seen yet, we're going to see more fallout from deals falling apart relative to jobs closing and things like that. So that's another variable to be contended with. It's, there's no point in pulling the punch and BSing you. It's just a reality that we're going to have to be aware of. So days on market times and potential buyer issues are something that sellers are going to have to be aware of. There's still a demand. I mean, people are still moving, though. There is still a relatively light inventory, which has been helpful for sellers for a while. Money is still it's still cheap. It's in flux. Some days it's very high, some days it's low. I've heard all kinds of various rumors, and I'm not going to get too into any of the financing specifics because I'm not a lender. I'm just going to refer you to one of our guys that are much better at me than me at all that stuff. So, but just be aware that financing is of issue now in ways that it wasn't before. It's just going to be additional questions and concerns relative to financing and that interest rates. We hear about the Fed a lot, but the Fed does not really have anything to do with at least fixed rate mortgages. The Fed can have an impact on adjustable rate mortgages, but for the most part, mortgages are tied to Treasury notes, usually the 10 and the 30 year. So, that is worth noting when you see all this economic stuff flashing around. It may or may not actually have any impact on rates or your situation at all. So, worth knowing. Also, virtual showings are going to be more and more of a thing moving forward now. Actually, we just had our first virtual showing at one of my current listings, and I won't call out the seller, but she did a great job. She just had a brand new baby, and for obvious reasons, I didn't really want anybody going through the house. A brand new infant is a different story altogether. So, you can't be too cautious when it comes to situations like that. So what actually happened was the buyer's agent and the buyer pulled up, took a look at the outside of the property and walked the grounds, and then FaceTimed the seller, and the seller actually walked through the interior of the property. Now, granted, I don't think that it's going to be the sellers are going to want to do a FaceTime with every single buyer or buyer's agent that wants to go through a property. So we do have some tricks that we can do as far as standardizing that virtual showing, getting a video up and making that a part of the process. Buyer's agents are all out there coaching their clients as well that this is a new norm for the moment. So it's just going to be the way it is for at least this moment in time. We'll see where that goes from here, but for now, this is something that definitely mitigates, the ability for the virus or whatever to basically just keep houses clean. If nobody's in them, they're clean, So another thing is remote and split closings, which I expect to become a new norm. And honestly, I was going to, separate from all this happening anyway, I was planning on making a push to normalize the remote closing anyway. The days of getting everybody around a table and signing documents all at the same time and getting it all done right there in one spot. The reality is that we don't really need to do that anymore. We've got so many systems in place. Title companies, it's very easy for them to coordinate split closings. We no longer have to make sure everybody's there at the same time. That's very inconvenient for a lot of buyers and sellers. You're coordinating now usually two title companies, possibly an attorney, a buyer, a seller. There could be multiples of each of those people in the equation, a lender, a couple agents, a closer. It's just a lot of people that are getting together in one space for no particular reason. So title companies are already changing that by splitting everybody off into separate rooms. But in my experience, a closing date's coming. If it happens on a Tuesday or it happens on a Wednesday, for the most part, that doesn't matter. So there's no reason that we just can't have a package at the seller's convenience be signed. Then that signed package gets moved to the buyer at another location, whatever time is convenient for them, and then they can sign it. Packages can be mailed UPS. There's so many different options that it doesn't make any sense for us to not be doing this anyway. So separate from our current situation, that's something that I was going to be pushing for pretty heavily in moving forward anyway. So it happens to work out very conveniently in this scenario. Other than that, so much of this business over the last several years has gravitated towards online stuff and virtual interactions. But e-signing is now the norm, so documents never really have to be dealt with directly. We don't have to meet and sign documents. They can be easily e-signed. The only document, again, that really needs to be physically signed is going to be the closing docs, and we have systems to keep that under control. Title companies can handle that. Other than that, EMDs going in. We're currently working on a standardized system to have EMDs delivered electronically. They can all be submitted without anybody doing anything physical. So that's another element. Now, there are still certain circumstances that there really needs to be some kind of hands-on engagement. Inspections being one. At this time, I don't have any systems in place to make sure inspections are handled remotely. That's not to say it won't happen in the future, but I have a hard time seeing exactly how, because part of the game for an inspector is to go climbing through everything. So the potential of maybe getting things pre-inspected or something like that, I mean, there's maybe some option there, but even that, I mean, a buyer is going to want his own independent party. It's going to be very difficult for a buyer to trust a seller's inspector anyway, just for due diligence. I mean, you know, if I was a buyer's agent for that buyer, I would definitely not just say, oh, well, that's fine. They already got one done. I mean, it's just, that is what it is. So there still will be some need for engagements, but it can be mitigated, and that's really the name of the game here. So again, don't know how long this is going to last, and I don't know what the end ramifications are going to be, but for the minute, we are still sitting in a situation where houses are moving, and there's actually a fairly sizable demand for them. We have properties that are well priced going up and getting very quick offers. That's not to say that days on market times aren't going to change moving forward. There's a real possibility of that, a likelihood of that, in fact. But again, I have no crystal ball or anything. We're just responding day by day and seeing where this whole thing goes. If you have any questions, I am most easily accessible from Facebook or text message. You can text me at 248-906-8659. You can message me on Facebook Messenger. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or you can email me, Tommy, Tommy, at DesmondRealty.com. If we've already talked about me doing a CMA for you virtually, I'm working on that. We have had our systems and the internet go down a little bit, so there's been some bandwidth problems, but I'm getting through that stack as fast as I can. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. We can have a conversation. I think that's pretty much it. We're still going full force here. At the moment, I myself am also locked in, not my house, but up at Shady Shores in Oscoda. That does not really inhibit any of my activities. Actually, our internet's better up here than it was in Troy, which is pretty sweet. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. Just wanted to let you guys know what was going on. I know this is weird, but don't get lost in it. Don't let this stuff crush you. Don't get terrified. I mean, there's a movie, Fear is the Mind Killer. Well, not a movie, it's a book, but yeah. Fear is the little death, brings total oblivion. So don't let that take over your situation. And honestly, I mean, there's some opportunity here. I mean, this is a world that we're coming into. This is going to change a lot of things. I personally get the vibe this is like a 9/11-esque scenario where we referred to the world before 9/11 and after 9/11 as though it was two totally different game plans. Everything changed during that event, and this, I think, is going to have some same ramifications with kids and everything being out of school. I mean, we're going to get used to a new norm. And when the systems come back into place to allow us to not do so many things remotely, one of the questions that we're going to have for each other is, well, why? You know, why shouldn't we continue to do these things remotely when they work? I mean, they work well, like the remote closings. Why should we go back to getting everybody around a table for no particular reason when this is much more convenient and there's a lot less people to coordinate, creates a lot less issues? Who knows? Who knows where that's going to go? But I mean, I know that as I'm locked in, and you know, in my off time here, there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, the Americans as a whole, like, we can get reacquainted with the creation of things. Seems like the last, decade or so, maybe more, it's just, we keep drifting further and further away from artistic and creative pursuits. And this is kind of a quiet moment where we get to look back and think about things that we were always interested in doing. And you have the time and the resource to do it now. I mean, we have the internet can teach us how to pretty much do anything you want. You want to learn how to paint? This might be a time to do that. I'm a computer music nerd, so I've definitely been spending the time that I can messing with that because I locked in. I'm not going anywhere. Cook with your family, hang out with your kids. It doesn't have to just be binge watching Netflix. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So anyway, it's weird right now. I get it. I hear you guys. Stay strong, and we'll see what happens on the other side of this. These weird moments create a lot of opportunity, so don't lose any hope yet. We're still kicking here, all right? Take care, guys.